Hey everyone, it's Christina Holloway here. So, I recently read the articles from the Hollywood Reporter and Vulture magazine about Scott Rudin's behavior and how he created a deeply toxic work environment. And I'll link those articles in the description below. Be warned, however, that if you have trauma from a toxic or abusive work experience, these articles may be too familiar for you. These articles go into great detail about the type of work environment that Scott Rudin created, and they include interviews with people who worked for him and either quit or were fired. Overall, it's pretty bad. But it did get me thinking. First of all, yes, I've experienced really horrible bosses in my career, and I've experienced really bad corporate cultures that were truly toxic. Second, there were absolutely signs during the interview process that I should not have ignored. So in this video, I'm going to discuss 6 red flags that came up very evident in these articles that you may want to pay attention to if you find yourself interviewing for what appears to be a great job, only to find that something inside you is telling you that this opportunity is not what it seems. Real quick before we get started, please make sure to hit the notification button, hit the like button if you enjoy this content, and go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you haven't already, please drop me a note and let me know what you're most interested in having me cover on this channel. My focus is definitely on career development, so there's plenty for us to discuss. I'd greatly appreciate any feedback. All right, so let's get started. Number 1, disrespectful of your time and poor time management. Now, when you're lucky enough to get called for a job interview, you spend a lot of time preparing for the interview. You review answers to common questions. You figure out what to wear, and you make sure you're on time. I interviewed for a job one time where the woman interviewing me was 30 minutes late, and I only had an hour for my lunch. She also acted offended that I couldn't stay later to make up that time. The thing is, you're making time to be there. The least you can expect is that the interviewer will be able to show up on time, equally prepared, and even just a little interested to talk to you. If you sense that you're not in an equally respectful meeting, just make sure to take this into consideration when it comes time to consider an offer. Yes, there are situations where this can happen and not be a red flag, and usually there's an apology involved. But more often than not, especially if this is the person you'll be working for who doesn't even acknowledge it or just expects you to be okay with it, it's not a good sign. And if you think you just might be the person who can change things once you get in there, think again. Poor time management is a habit, and it's something that a person needs to work on for themselves. You can't fix a broken person, and no, it's never because they don't have enough help. Number 2, high turnover rate in the position. Now, the Vulture article mentions that Scott Rudin bragged that over the course of 5 years, he had fired 119 assistants. That's equivalent to firing someone on average every 10 days. In fact, in that same article, one assistant mentioned that a person with seniority averaged about 30 days worth of experience in the office. And that's crazy. So if you're in an interview, you can ask, why did the last person leave? You can also ask, how long was that person in the role? And how many people have filled the role in the last year or two? In terms of red flags, you're definitely paying attention to how nervous the interviewer is with these questions. If it's difficult to get a straight answer, pay attention to it. The answer could be something like, he has very high standards, or she takes some getting used to, or sometimes he can be an acquired taste. Make a note of any answers that are evasive. If there's no problem, it should be easy to answer these questions. At the same time, and this is also mentioned in the article, many people saw this as a challenge to do exceptional work and try to prove that they were the exception to the rule. I actually did this too. I was referred to a job by a person who told me that the boss had a reputation for firing people. She had high turnover, and because I was young, I figured I'd be the one to change that. To prove that, I had what it takes. Unfortunately, again, these are people who look for reasons to fire someone. They aren't actually sitting around wishing the perfect person would come along. This is always the kind of person who prides themselves on having such high standards or expectations that no one will ever be good enough. There's a very high chance that you won't make the impact you thought you would. Number 3, lack of diversity. This one also jumped out at me with the Vulture article. Scott Rudin was known to only prefer to work with white men and white men who were gay. He was also known to hate working with women, and he hated working with black women in particular. I don't know why. I don't care why. Well, first, he was a misogynist, and second, he was a clear racist. So, aside from that, we want you to pay attention to what's going on here. Now, you may think it's okay. If you don't represent one of the marginalized groups, what's the harm? Well, on the one hand, accepting a job offer at a company that only works with a certain group of people says it's just as much about you as it does about the company. If the company blatantly excludes a certain demographic of people, it's not a good place to work. This allows a company culture to become toxic very fast. The more insular and exclusive it becomes, the less likely they are to consider different points of view or engage in collaboration or recognize good work. Because in essence, you're all the same people. There's nothing different or unique about you. Diversity as part of a company's values is very important. You can ask about a company's diversity program and approach, or you can also just look around the office. You know, as soon as in-person interviews come back, too many faces that look like yours? Ask yourself why. Number 4, did the interviewer ask you how well you get along with difficult people? Ask them why they're asking you that, and then try to get them to give you an example of what working with a difficult person would look like. This was also in the Vulture article and came up indirectly for an assistant who worked for Scott Rudin and his boss, who was equally unhinged. Someone asked her during a separate interview how she handled working with difficult people, which made her laugh given how unholy her experience in that area was. But, and here's the thing, the question can come up as a way to understand how you respond to difficult situations, but you should also probe more with that question. It's important to know if you'll be working with someone who's really difficult or interacting with one or more people on the team who can be disagreeable. In the first situation, you have no power. In the second situation, there may be a little more latitude. Make sure you understand exactly what you're getting into if this question comes up. Number 5, the interviewer gossips or gives you unsolicited information about current or previous employees. You could very well sit down for an interview and get an earful about everyone in the department, all the reasons the previous person didn't work out, and some additional information that's probably none of your business. Now, while you might think you've struck gold here, hey, this person's being super honest, right? Pay attention to someone who gives you too much information. Is this person nervous and talking too much to fill silent moments? Maybe. Or, unfortunately, is this person behaving more cynical and judgmental? Does this person share strange information like, oh, you don't need to worry about him, no one takes him seriously here anyway? That's pretty serious. And remember, if this person is gossiping in the interview, then he or she is gossiping about you as well. Information on your resume, what you were wearing, how you answered questions. A gossip likes to be the center of attention. Nothing is off limits. Number 6, no one else is involved in the interview. I once interviewed with someone who told me she ran a large law firm. I interviewed with her 2 times and agreed to work in her office. When I showed up, there were only 3 other people there. If you don't get the chance to interview with other people who are allowed to be involved with the decision-making progress, then there could be something else going on. The interview process should allow for you to meet a human resources representative who can explain the job description, benefits, and salary information. You should also be able to meet at least one other person from the team or department where you'll work, and you should be able to get a sense for how these people work together. Again, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Ask questions about the work environment. How are your last-minute requests handled? Or, what's the team's bigger objective at the company? I once went for an interview where I was asked to come back 3 times, and the last time I went back, someone from the team took me to lunch, gave me a demo of a typical day at the office, and answered a lot of my questions, including one question about how long people typically stayed in that department before transferring out. It turned out they usually left after 18 months to move into other departments for bigger opportunities. And that's what I was looking for. It was a really immersive day. Now, many companies don't go this far, but having the ability to talk to anyone else besides the hiring manager will help you get a sense for how productivity looks before you start working there. Okay, so that's all 6 areas to watch for red flags during the interview process. And here's one more, a bonus if you will. There are ways to do research on the company and the department, and that's to check Glassdoor. This website allows employees to post honest feedback about the company or position without revealing their names. If you find that you're becoming worried about some red flags, check out Glassdoor to get a better understanding of the employee dynamics at play. And above all, if you have a bad feeling about this job interview, pay attention to it. Now, the thing about Scott Rudin's situation is that many people knew and understood what kind of person he was, and they still tried to work with him. It's clear that many of them saw the experience, no matter how short-lived, as valuable on their resume. And this is the problem with abuse in the workplace that goes on far too long. For every person who says this isn't worth it, there's plenty more who will say, let me take a shot at it. No job is worth sacrificing your mental and physical well-being. Now, you may have done your interviews, and although everything went well, you now find yourself in a toxic or unexpectedly difficult work environment. It's okay if you miss the red flags. As I mentioned here, I also walked into some bad situations. Feel free to start looking for other work. It's always better to start looking for a job while you have a job. Many times we don't have that luxury, but if you can hold on, try to transition into something else quickly. Also, don't beat yourself up about it. A toxic work environment usually includes one or more people who are manipulative. They know how to be deceptive, and accepting that you were duped can be a hit to the ego. Accept that this could happen to you, and then take the steps to find another job as soon as possible. And don't be too hard on yourself. A toxic work environment is hard to spot from the outside. And that's it for this video on how to spot red flags during the job interview. This video is all about taking a look at a recently exposed toxic work environment and exploring what the interviewer is telling you about the job without actually admitting it's unhealthy. Now, if you want to learn more about developing and building a successful career through a strong personal brand, then take the time to download my free ebook called The Perfect Fit. I've included it in the description below. Just a reminder that if you like this video and you want to see more content that will help you build an effective leadership brand as you climb that ladder of success, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a helpful tip from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!